Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for May 2nd, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and also present are Ralph Kohler sharing their screen, and Simo Helston. Go ahead, Ralph.
We're looking at issue number 2447955, change extend menu item to extensions. That issue is from 2015, but if we scroll down, it got momentum about 10 hours ago, where basically a merge request was created and an initial step was taken at the issue, and the needs usability review tag was set by M. Strelin. It's basically about changing the menu item from extend to extensions as the title already implies. And if we go over, UX meeting, DDEV. Yeah, as you can see here, it's simply changing extend to extensions, which is, as M. Strelin already mentioned on the issue, it's something we've also touched during the noun foraging for Drupalisms, that inconsistency, all those menu items are basically nouns here, while extend was a verb. And yeah, that merge request would tackle that. Still, the question is if extension is the right label for it in the future, also how things are changing with Experience Builder getting in, how the appearance page is tackled. But as I've linked on the thread for today's meeting, there's also an issue we've discussed in August or September last year. It's 19733322, add drop buttons to the appearance page. And if you scroll down in the comment number 26, we first tackled what the issue is about, but then branched out basically and discussed the entire extend page with recipes, project browser, and as well as the appearance page, how it fit in, because basically themes are also extensions. And one suggestion there I've raised was basically moving themes also into under the extensions or extend menu item. Yeah, but those are just a few entailed topics to name. And as we've mentioned right before the meeting, another detail that should be minded for the merge request is also if all the cases using extend are covered by the merge request, because the odds are high that, for example, in the documentation or in other places, but overall, I would be behind basically moving from a verb to an object here, a noun, I mean. So any questions or comments?
I think if we move to a noun, then we have to really think it carefully, because we can extend with plugins or modules or themes or something like that. That's something we do with certain category of items. So if we call it extensions, it's more kind of definitive. But I don't mind the word extensions. But that's something that should be used then universally.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to consider these related issues, but I don't want to say that the one we're currently looking at is necessarily blocked on any of them, because it may be a long time before we get around to fixing them. So my initial thought is, one, it's more consistent to use a noun. As you said, all the other menu items are nouns, and this one sticks out as being a verb. If you look at the screenshots on the issue, they show the toolbar in the default horizontal layout, and there's a slight drawback that extensions is a few characters longer than extend. But I think the consistency is sort of more important than that few extra characters. And of course, we're only looking at English. I'm not sure whether it'll be true in other languages that the noun is longer than the verb. To Simo's point, I don't see that changing from a verb to a noun, especially makes it more or less obvious that, or more or less consistent, that it actually refers just to modules and not themes. And also remember, there's a third type of extension, profiles. They haven't gone away yet. Despite the fact that they've gotten a lot of bad press in the last few years as we start talking about recipes. Profiles are still there, and they are still extensions. And further to Simo's point, that can be discussed on the other issue where we talk about rearranging menu items. If we decide that themes should come under extensions along with modules, then that would resolve that issue.
Well, what I was saying, I think it's kind of a like a similar category. It would become similar category, like we have entity, which has different kind of things. So extensions would be a category on its own, in a way, if we have a name for it. But I'm thinking like extensions would be maybe something that are kind of are put into the file system. But then if it's a recipe is only kind of applied and it doesn't stay in the file system. But I'm trying to find out, thinking about what would be the definition of an extension.
Right, and there is this internal technical use of the word extension that I've been talking about that includes just those three things. And you're perfectly right that in the ordinary usage, we would expect recipes to come under there, and the project browser does put them under there. So the question of whether all references to extend have been replaced with extensions, that's something that should be discussed on the issue, but I don't think is something we have to talk about here. I guess what we have to talk about here is if we are going to go with a noun, is there a better noun? Instead of just using the same root, is there something better we could use?
For argument's sake, I would say plugins.
Say again?
So that's something that plugins, that's something that a number of people are familiar with, but it might not be the correct term, but that's something that I think people would recognize plugins as something that you can install.
But plugins you already have within modules is a problem.
Yes.
I wonder, are there any places in the user interface where we already use plugins?
In the user interface, maybe in the context of ECA, it might be used, but oops, 1 second.
ECA is part of Drupal CMS.
Yeah.
So we should consider that as well. Extensions, plugins. Yeah, naming things is hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the problems is that browsers have extensions, and that's something that's kind of comes on top of the thing, not integrated into part of the whole thing.
Good
So
point.
in a way, so browser extensions, they are kind of a how do you call it? A kind of a layer on top of browser instead of something that kind of applies to the browser itself. So in a way, so browser extensions is something that is well, anybody who uses a Drupal site with a web browser probably has some extensions in the browser. So is this something that would kind of feel similar?
So are you saying that's a good thing because people are used to extending their browser and they'll recognize it as extending Drupal? Or are you saying that's a bad thing because they would expect that tab to take them to browser extensions?
I'm thinking that because the browser extensions don't change the content, but they change the interface. But modules, they kind of can apply something deeper. So I'm thinking that if it's confusing or not. So I'm not saying that it is, but I'm just wondering how, because it's a little bit difficult to evaluate these when you know what it's supposed to do already.
And I see Ralph has brought up the ECA modules settings page, and yes, it does use the term plugins.
Yeah. Aside ECA, maybe in the maybe status reports. No. Oh, views plugins, for example. There you also have plugins as a concept. So plugins is already not directly that all ubiquitous available, but it is in the user interface. But one other remark in regards of the suggestion of extensions, it also depends, I suppose, on shall there only be modules there, or yeah, as Project Browser already did, recipes. And in case, for example, if themes at a later point might go in there, because Project Browser also provides it's sooner or later a integration for searching themes, then going with something like plugins or modules would be too narrow in scope and wouldn't meet the meeting of things like themes or recipes that way.
Project Browser does search for themes, doesn't it? Or at
Not
least it's
yet.
planned to.
It's planned at one point, but at the moment does not at all. At the moment, it only searches for, it's capable to search only for, no, not even for recipes. Recipes are only searched in the file system if an installation ships recipes, but at this point, I'm not 100% sure, but I guess it's not possible to search on Drupal.org yet.
Right.
And then there is also, in regards of terminology, also the problem on Drupal.org. At the moment, things are called projects. So recipes file also on the projects. That is another detail to mind.
Right, so that's a candidate term. We could use projects rather than extensions. I think extensions is better, but
Yep.
worth considering. So, on the theory that we should not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, I'm inclined to say go ahead and change from extend to extensions.
At least it's a small change, so some people probably won't even notice it.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll continue to think about the related questions, and things might change again, but for now, let's approve this particular change and move on.
Yeah.
Ralph, do you have the bandwidth to leave a comment on that issue?
Yeah, I can. Shall I also add a comment in regard a remark in regards of to ensure that the docs are also covered and comments in case, or I can, before commenting, I can quickly search the code base for extend.
Sure. Always, feel free to make other comments on the issue. That is not part of the usability review, but
Yeah.
couldn't hurt.
Yeah, but it was just a concern that came up during pre-discussion as well as in the discussion, so I thought it might be worth to know to mention.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's all I'm saying is that it's not part of the usability review. It's
No.
an additional thing to do on the issue.
And shall I also mention, the consideration of, for example, project or something like modules or plugins, or should we just keep it narrow and say simple, go with extension?
Yeah. Again, I think more information is better.
Okay.
So make the recommendation clear and short, but then add a paragraph saying we also discussed these other things and mention related issues like rearranging the admin interface or the admin menu, project browser. So just
to name a few.
Mention the things that we've thought about in connection with this, but always make that sort of discussion separate from the main point, which is that yes, we approve of this change.
Just add it as additional context for the future,
right?
To keep in mind, but in core it should simply be about we are fine with the change. So okay. Oops, I'll stop sharing.
Okay. And Simo, would you like to show the issue you brought up, or shall I? Simo, you're muted.
Sorry, no, something came up. I didn't get that.
Why don't I share my screen?
Or I could also reshare. Shall I?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Issue number?
3514939 help better help text for date and time field.
And yes, this does look like a piece of what we worked on in a separate issue.
Oh,
I have the link handy, I think.
it's like oh.
Here we go.
Found it.
Put it in Zoom chat. I think that's the right one.
But you mean that issue?
So what I put in is the issue to refine field descriptions.
Ah. Oh, there it is. Issue number 3370326.
Right. So this issue just for the date and time field, does it have a specific recommendation? Is that screenshot the after? Yeah, I guess it must be. So it's as though if that's the implementation of hook help, then this issue is not actually part of what we were looking at, just related to it. This would be what shows up on the help page.
Mm. But then I don't understand why the screenshot is there. Because that is from the add a field flow.
Yes, which is the issue that we worked on.
Yeah.
So let's see, the reporter is Arpiter and someone else, Arun Sahijpal, worked on the merge request.
Just one thing to check. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Admin. If we're adding manage fields, a date and time. Because if you take a look here, the list without the merge request we were working on is way shorter than that one here.
Right. So that's under the proposed resolution section. And I think that's what was proposed by the original reporter. And so the original reporter seems to have had in mind updating exactly the same text that we were looking at. But the person who made the merge request seems to have updated the help text.
Okay, now I understand this.
So so I guess maybe I'm being inconsistent because, in the previous issue I said, don't let bigger, more complex issues block incremental progress in a targeted issue. But in this case, I think, yes, since we have, well, one, we have spent a lot of time, and two, we're actually close to implementing the changes we proposed. I think I'd suggest making the changes on the issue we've been working on. So leave a comment here and suggest that that the reporter join the conversation there. If you look at the last comment on the issue, the reporter is saying that they're trying to start a broader conversation. So I think the easy way to do that is to point them to the issue where we've been discussing that text along with all the others.
Read. One detail I wondered about, and it reminds me that I still have to write a follow-up issue for that. A few weeks ago, we've discussed one issue about date and time fields with that relative time default value, and the confusion with UTC and which time zone there is. And that is one detail. I'm not sure if it's interesting that the reporter put it in the proposed resolutions on that creation flow on that card. But I wonder, I'm drawn between if it makes sense to place it there as well, or if it's enough to use it only on that relative time field we've discussed, or if the entire field has to re-architect it, because still, if you take a look at the date and time field, a time zone field isn't available there. So you actually don't have the time zone saved a date and time is created in.
That's right. As the text here says, the date is stored without time zone information.
Yeah.
Can be stored as a date time string in the database or as a timestamp, but either way, it is stored in UTC. And a change to that, I think, is sort of outside the scope of usability.
Yeah, but then still the other issue is affected because that string, that description has to change as soon as the other issue gets in, because then it changes the behavior from setting to UTC to setting to the time zone of the person that created the date. That is a change in behavior then.
No, I don't think there's any open issue that's going to change the way data are stored.
It is. That was the thing we've discussed a few weeks ago. That exact, I can search for it 1 second.
The default value, but here you're talking about the field values.
Yeah, but S. 1 second. There it is. Oh, yeah, it's only, yeah. It's only for the relative values. I thought it was in general, but no, it is not. Apologies. And
But say-
issue number is 3169876.
Right.
Yeah, but I agree with your suggestion to move the discussion over to the other issue.
Yeah, I think that's also the best approach.
And the only question is whether what to do with the existing merge request, because it does do something that perhaps we should look at. It adds some help text, and should we open a new issue to do that, or should we repurpose this issue? Because just based on the issue description, I think this issue should be closed as a duplicate of the one we're already working on. But again, the merge request does something different from what the proposed resolution says.
I think, strictly speaking, only the screenshot is misleading, but better help text could basically be about the help page, what is basically also added, and improved documentation is also in line. It's only the screenshot that is about, yeah, the field creation.
Oh, also the steps to reproduce. They mentioned adding a date and time field.
Oh, okay.
There.
Okay. True. But in any way, probably the best might be to repurpose that issue and make it about the help text. And in addition to that, yeah, propose that the issue creator joins the conversation over in the other issue and adds their input there.
Right. Oh, who wants to leave that comment? Okay, I can do that. I think the next step on this issue, 3370326, is to add add a section for things that apply to all the options. So when you are adding a new field and you've gotten to the stage where you're choosing between 3 or 4 different options for a text field, add something that applies to add help text that applies to all of them, so that each option only has to talk about the things that make it different from the other options. And then we have some suggestions for text to go in that section once that section exists. And maybe I can find time to do that over the weekend. We still have 20 minutes left in our schedule. Towards the very end of the last meeting, we started talking about Drupal Marketplace,
Yep.
which I guess is an initiative that may or may not take off the ground. Shall we return to that, or is there something else to talk about?
Okay. On the marketplace, there's currently a long discussion. Where is it? It's more about governance and monetization.
I put a link in the Zoom chat to the Marketplace initiative. It's drupal.org/about/starshot/marketplace-initiative for the sake of the recording. Like, I can take over the screen share.
Oops, yeah. Sorry. I was still sharing, sorry.
Yep. So yeah, this was, sort of one of the big points of the Dries note at DrupalCon Atlanta. I was there, what was that, late March? And it's sort of building on the idea of recipes to, package them up into something bigger. So I guess a site template is the idea, and it would bundle some recipes and probably also a theme. And the idea is to give people, a starting point that sort of looks like what they have in mind for their website, and then let them start tweaking it. And I guess maybe the logic isn't entirely clear to me, but the idea is that this is something that would probably be monetized. Maybe that's just because themes are traditionally so hard, so much work, that themes rather than modules are where people are willing to spend money. Do you want to say something? So there are go ahead.
Just one brief addition. That's basically the point that the thread I've linked is mainly about the monetarization aspect. And from what I've only skimmed through it because it's way too much text there. But yeah, the argumentation basically is that module maintainers and agencies are able to provide modules and then still generate follow-up work and generate revenue via that. But the argumentation was basically the designers, if they provide a theme, they don't have really an option to get revenue by that with follow-up work, or because people will simply use the theme and probably don't need anything else. And therefore, that was the argumentation. Someone puts in a lot of work and then doesn't get anything out of it. Yeah, and the concern in the thread by Jürgen was basically that, yeah, it's you open the gates by starting to monetize any parts. So that's the first step, and then it might snowball, is his worry.
Right. So that's obviously a big question. Drupal is monetized. Agencies make their livings by getting paid to build sites for people. What should the role of the Drupal Association, Drupal maintainers be in supporting monetization is the question. And so traditionally, Drupal.org has been a place where you have open source software that anyone can download. But anyway, I don't think that our job is to resolve the question of monetization, whether it should happen or not. And this initiative might not go anywhere. As it says, what's happening here is that we are exploring the opportunity, and by DrupalCon Vienna, make a go, no-go decision. Will it happen at all? And that's not our job. So let's assume that it is going to go forward and think about the usability issues involved. How do people find the new marketplace once they're there? How do they sift through the various options? We've already thought a lot about project browser, categorizing things, making things more findable. I don't know, what are the other usability issues, assuming that this initiative is going to go forward?
I think one issue would be that it will be confusing to the users if projects are split into commercial versions and community editions, and which goes there. So if projects are split into 4 versions, that will be confusing.
So when you talk about projects, do you mean that one project might have a free version and a paid premium version? Or are you saying that some projects are paid for and some projects are free?
I'm thinking that there probably will be some kind of a basic edition or community edition, and then the professional edition that has more features, but it costs. You need to buy it from the marketplace. I'm thinking that might happen. It happens with a lot of other software.
Right, the so-called freemium model. So you think that model would be confusing. There are other arguments in favor or for or against that model, but the usability is you say that it's confusing.
One addition. I agree that is potentially it might be confusing, and it's already confusing from with the OOUX terminology and approach. There's the concept of masked objects where you're unable to distinguish between different kinds of objects. And if you take a look at the moment in Project Browser, you're already unable to distinguish what is a module and what is a recipe, except you mind that you're on, for example, the recipe page or a project page, but the cards itself visually and by the elements on the card are more or less the same and hard to distinguish. And that might be similar point in regards of what is, for example, a free variant of an object and which is a paid variant of an object.
Right. And as soon as there is the incentive, the monetary incentive, whoever controls it has an incentive to push people towards the paid version.
Yep. And also, if you take a look at, for example, the air quotes marketplace or the browser in WordPress, it's so hard to distinguish and see what is free, what costs, and then also the pricing models that modules take with, for example, the subscription-based models for monthly or yearly subscription fees. Oh, it's a mess. And
So I think there's
just,
go ahead.
Just that's my worry that that the marketplace and Drupal might evolve in a similar direction if there isn't some prevention governance-wise, marketplace rules-wise. So that could be sort of contained to a certain degree.
And I think there is a recommendation we can make here that if there is going to be a marketplace, perhaps it would be Drupal.com rather than Drupal.org. The recommendation is that that marketplace would have a responsibility to make that distinction, to say what you can get for free on Drupal.org and what the supposed value add is of the paid offerings.
Yeah.
Is that something we can all agree to?
Some sort of comparison chart for an object, like a theme, for example.
That's a possibility. I wouldn't want to make that an actual recommendation. We're getting a thumbs up from Simo.
Yep.
But sure, one of those
Just one
checklists
option,
that marketing people like to use to say, oh, look, our product has all the check marks and competitors don't have any of the check marks. But that format could certainly work.
Yeah.
So I think the vision, again, the marketplace is envisioned not to be a marketplace of paid versions of modules, but of these site templates that Dries suggested as sort of the larger scale version of a recipe. And so the initial vision, at least, what Dries presented at DrupalCon, was that the marketplace would have templates, and each template would be a functional site that you could install, including modules, including recipes, and including a theme. Go ahead, Ralph.
Just one thought and one question. I wonder why a marketplace would be even necessary without monetization, because then you could simply use Project Browser and then everything would be working out of the box. And the question I have is simply those site templates, is because you've mentioned recipes and modules. Is that then the site template more than a regular template, which is basically just, in air quotes, just a theme?
So I think the site template would bundle a theme with, say a recipe that probably composes a bunch of smaller recipes. So I remember years ago there was an agency that targeted a specific niche. It targeted independent private schools.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have the same things. They have an English department and they have a sports program, and they have administration, and they want to attract new students, and they want to give information to current students. So their needs are all very similar. So this agency put together a collection of modules, which today would be a recipe, and they would build the site, and then what each school really wants is a brand identity. So they want to have their own voice in words and images, and so they would do a lot of custom work to build a custom theme for the school. So if that market approach were used in the world where the Drupal marketplace exists, they would put up one or maybe a few site templates where someone could look at screenshots and say, oh yes, this looks like the sort of website that I want to have for my private school. And then they could, pay a standard fee, I guess, and install the template and start to add content to it. So a different model to get at the same approach, and sort of less involvement from the agency, and more of a product than a service, I guess.
Basically pre-built off the shelf.
Yes. Here's a theme, plug in your own images, and it will look very different. I'm not sure how effective that is, but
So it would be a little bit similar to what we currently have for the European network of Drupal associations. There is a kind of this project where we can have a similar site where we just change the content.
yeah, I think that's the goal. And that's obviously a niche that's easy to target. They know that they want a Drupal site. Private schools or dentists or pizza shops. These are not markets that know that they want Drupal sites, although perhaps some of them do. So I think we're at the end of the hour. So any closing remarks before we quit? I'm not sure where to leave this feedback, but I'll try to find someplace to make our recommendation. Go ahead.
No, just that I have to think about it a bit more. I'm still uncertain about what the clear goal of that marketplace actually is. If it's just about monetization and that's that off-the-shelf products, or if it's more about the problem Thomas had with, for example, find a nice theme simply.
Yeah, and I also have reservations about monetization in general. I think I am a true believer in open source software, and part of open is being free. But we'll see what happens.
Yep.
We'll try to make our input, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
And I have to make plans to go to DrupalCon Vienna to see what the next steps are announced there. Okay, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
Do it
have a
again
nice
next week.
weekend.
have a nice weekend.
You too.
Likewise.